Hello, I'm Mark Schildhausen. Because things on the internet seem to lose their date references pretty easily, today is Monday, July 8th, 2024. On Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024, we visited the Petersen Automotive Museum on the north side of Los Angeles. And the video of the first 3 floors of the museum is on its own. This video is to deal with the vault, which is the basement, basically a storage area that you're allowed to roam. Not a lot of signage down there. And I highly recommend that this is one of the 5 best museums we've ever been in. Really super. The museum portion, the first 3 floors, top 3 floors, whatever you want to say, are outstanding. The vault is phenomenal. Highly recommend you become members so that you can visit it more than once, and check out your member benefits. We joined as dual members, I think it is. So my wife and I each get access to the museum, the first 3 floors, throughout the next year. We have 2 free parking passes. Maximum parking fee, I think, is $21, so that alone is worth $42. And we have 4 passes for the vault, and I think those are $20+ a piece or something, whatever. So membership pays off if you're going to be able to visit the museum more than once. And let me tell you, if you're a sign reader, you're going to have to visit this museum 5 or 6 days to read the signs for all the displays. I am a sign reader, but unfortunately, knowing that I have restricted time, I do a lot of my sign reading after I get home with digital photography. So this is another long video. Highly recommend you become a member. This is a fantastic museum, probably one of the top 5 we've ever visited. And 2 of the top 5 that we visited were in Bastogne, Belgium, associated with the Battle of the Bulge. So not a whole lot of people are going to get to go see those. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. See you on the next one. With a membership, you get access to the vault, which is the basement, a limited number of times. 2, we have a dual membership, so we have 2 passes for each one of us, so a total of 4. And it's in the basement. It's a storage area. Some of the exhibits that are in the basement, in the vault, apparently were up on the museum floor at one time because they have signage. Some of them don't. And some of them are currently registered cars. It looks like they might be parked there waiting for a specific event. Anyways, highly recommend you pay the fees. You go down and at least see it. And I recommend you actually start in the vault. Some of the things in the vault, like this doctor's buggy from about 1904, San Francisco Fire Department, don't have signs, but you can kind of figure out what they are by taking good photos of the hood ornaments, identification medallions on the side of the hood, lights on the mirrors, the hubcaps and things like that. And I've done a number of research, quite a bit of research, trying to find what I was taking photos of. Going back to an era when cars were virtually handmade and each one was unique and interchangeable parts were a dream of the future. This 1910 DeMont Runabout, a beautifully constructed car, beautifully maintained, sitting in a prized place at the museum in the vault. And as you can see, these cars are literally parked next to each other, so you won't see a whole lot of side or back photos because they ask you not to go between them or go around them. This 1914 Petite Special is another one of those cars that went through a number of years in design, very specifically for the Southern California market, top down, things like that. But however, due to financial issues and the world situation, World War I, it never went into production, but it's a beautiful looking car. Many of the early cars were expensive because they were handmade. They were literally one of a kind. You fit each piece together, and the 1916 Cardin, like many cars in this cycle car concept, were an effort to build smaller, lighter weight cars. And this one was built in England, and it was an effort, as I said, to to make a less expensive car. However, due to repair parts as this thing got older, it was tough to maintain. One of the many cars in the vault that has no signage. I did some research. I'm pretty certain this is really close to a 1919 Model T. Another one without any signage, and in the next photo in this you'll see that it is a Regal motor car. And doing some research, as close as I can come up with this one, it's probably about a 1909, 1910. I'm not sure about that. All I can tell you is it is a Regal motor car. The license plates on this one read 1928 or 1929. The radiator reads Austin, and when you kind of search it, you end up with a 1929 Austin motor car. The Model T went through a number of reiterations over the numerous years that it was built, and reading license plates on this one, we can assume it's a 1927 Model T that probably belonged to Ron at one time, so it's an easy lookup. Cars of various ages are beautiful, and here's a 1913 Rolls-Royce 40/50 Silver Ghost, something in French Tour. Really a beautiful car, and it's really nice that they gave us the signage on this one, so we can now use that to make sure we know what we're talking about. I just realized something in the earlier audios. I said it was a Model T. I didn't say it was a Ford. Ford built the Model T for a number of years. I think it was 1909 to 1927 or 28. And here's a 1915 Model T runabout. Through that production time, there were many, many modifications to the vehicle before they introduced the Model A, which had many more modifications. Ford with the Model T had numerous competitors, and the 1922 Chevy Series 490 Coupe was one of them. It had a starter, conventional transmission, overhead valves, so it was easier to maintain. They only made 243,479 of them, and they cost $850, which is $12,200 in the reference dollars on the signage. One source that I just checked says the Model T was in production from 1908 to 1927. That's 19 years, and according to this sign, they produced more than 15 million of them, and they were quite readily available, and they were also you were able to highly modify them. Sometimes modifications out of factory came out in more than one bottle. With this blue two-row seat vehicle, we're using a combination of the license plate, which says 22, so it's a 1922, and on the grill, on the radiator, it says Willys-Night, Willeys-Night, Kinght, and the research confirms that we've got a 1922 Willys-Night. Back to research, and I'm guessing this is a 1932 Rolls-Royce. Not sure what make, not sure what model, and can't really confirm the date, but I'm guessing at 1932. Numerous Rolls-Royces in the collection, and I'm guessing in the 1932 time frame. Again, no signage and no real good clues. It seems we're on Rolls-Royce Row. 1927 Rolls Phantom 1 town car, another beautiful car sitting there, and there weren't a whole lot of style changes as we went through these years that I was researching on the internet. Are these two, one hardtop, one convertible, it looks like, both 1980 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadows? All I can do is guess. If you're a fan of the original Avengers series, this is maybe a 1937 Bentley, and that's a guess. It has enclosed fenders, so it's out of the early to mid 1930s. I'm just guessing at 1937. They ask you not to walk between the cars, behind the cars, whatever, so you can't get a good look at the sides of these cars, the profiles. You can't get a good look at the trunk, so you have to do the research as best as possible, and many of these years that I'm saying are estimates. I'm guessing this is a 1938 Packard. I know it's a Packard. I'm guessing at 38. My research on this one shows that it is a 1934 LaSalle Series 350. The hood ornament on this one is somewhat distinctive, and the medallion on the side of the hood, on the louvers of the hook, said say Packard Super 8. A bit of research comes back with it's most likely a 1934 Packard Super 8. One of the clues I'm looking for, and it's shown in this photo here, is this mirror says Packard. Plus, look at the way it's mounted on the spare tire, and this appears to be a Packard 1929. I'm not sure exactly what model, but between the hood ornament and the mirrors, it's a Packard. Back to those spare mounted mirrors, spare tire mounted mirrors. This indicates, with a little bit of research, in the side of the hood says Packard Super 8, that this is most likely a 1932 Packard Model 12. There were a lot of motorcycles in the vault, probably over 100 of them, and I don't remember any signage on any of them, and a couple of them appeared to have current license plates on them. Sales or production on the Tesla Cybertruck started in November of 2023, according to my research, so I labeled this a 2024 Tesla Cybertruck. According to the people at the Petersen Automotive Museum, this particular specimen was taken out to a production range, to a rifle range, to a pistol range, and was shot at just to see how it was going to respond. It advertises a dent-resistant body made out of stainless steel. In chasing some of these down, you get some false initial starts. That S on the hood is for the model, not the make, and if you were to look inside where the engine gauges are on the center console, it says Crosley. That takes you off. Now if you look at the floor mat, it's ION, and that gives you a clue, and when you chase Crosley, you end up identifying this particular vehicle as a 1950 Crosley Scorpion Special. There were a couple of Teslas sitting there besides the Cybertruck, and the white one with the mini grill says NASA on the side. We didn't see any license plates on it, so I don't know if it was a government vehicle or not. And then the maroon or deep red, whatever we want to call it, Tesla sitting next to it was a full grill Tesla. I'm not a fan of the full grill. On this McLaren, I did some research, and I think this is a 1971 McLaren M8E-F. On the side of it, it says Denny Home, and that was one of the things I used for research. The 1972 Alpine A110, if you read the narrative on this, 7,500 of these cars were produced, and a number of them were produced for specific racing, factory prepared racing, and when that was done, even with the fiberglass body, components that were steel were removed and replaced with plastic, like the bumpers and things like that. And this car does have a favorable record on the track. There are race cars all over this place of all different kinds. My preferred racing is drag racing, and that's okay. I watch things. And with the drag racing presentation, unfortunately my camera for some reason didn't focus, but there's a couple of slingshot dragsters here from the kind of later eras, but they are front engine dragsters, so when the driver sits in them, he is actually behind the differential with his legs going over the differential to operate the clutch and the gas, which kind of makes it kind of fun and interesting. And one of them is a twin engine flathead V8 engine, and my dad watched these a number of times. My dad was a fantastic mechanic, and his criticism of this is to get these engines paired, you need a common intake system between the two of them so that all the cylinders got the same ratio of fuel. Otherwise, one engine was fighting the other, and you had to have a common ignition system so that the timing was in sync as well, and then they had to be mated up together, best with a custom-made crankshaft. Well, my preference is drag racing. Go in a straight line just as fast as you can over the quarter mile and see what technology you can use to reduce the time and increase the speed. Things like the 1995 McLaren MP4-10, as shown here, are just, I am amazed by the speeds that they can take the corners at, that they can accelerate coming out of the corners. These guys are just absolutely fantastic, and there were a number of race cars on display around here, some with signage, some without. These makes and models of race cars, including the Lotus that's here, and then this Williams FW115D, and whatever else are here. They're absolutely fantastic. It does amaze me the technology that these guys use and these guys develop, and how they push the development of cars, both for the standard road drivers of us and whatever else. I'm just absolutely amazed, and I love seeing them. I just prefer drag racing. Dan Gurney, race car driver and builder, and a man of some degree of fame. His 1998 AAR Eagle Champ car, which was driven by a couple of people and took first place at the 1998 Texaco Grand Prix in Houston. Not a bad record, and one of those beautiful open wheel cars. Working with the race cars, if you can find numbers, names, years on them, you're doing really good. I didn't have any luck with these, so they're just beautiful photos and beautiful cars. The 1957 Bangert Teverbog Kirkland Bonneville Special is another one of those one-of-one cars, running a Mercury V8, supercharged Mercury V8, 368 cubic inches, 175 miles an hour, fiberglass body. This was restored, rebuilt, re-established after it was running and put on display. The 1996 Corbin Sparrow personal transportation pod is an electric vehicle, and it doesn't say how many were produced, but you could park it in the motorcycle parking spots because it was a three-wheeler, and use the HOV lanes unless specifically prohibited to motorcycles. The GM EV1, which was a mass-produced electric car back in 1996 timeframe, we had several of them running around Southern California. I talked to one of the fellow college instructors that had one, and I asked him how it was. He said, "Oh, it's okay." And I got the impression he wasn't totally enthused with it. When somebody says their car is, well, okay, well, we meet the Michelin Man again on the 2001 Nissan Hyper Mini, which is an electric vehicle. It's got lithium-ion batteries that can be recharged in about 40 hours. Range is about 72 miles. It says that it can reach freeway speeds and a lot of plastic parts, so I wonder how it would have passed the crash tests. The 1994 US Electra car GTP Coupe is a modification or a follow-on to a gas-powered Consigliere GTP supercar, and it was listed in the Neiman Marcus catalog for $75,000, and evidently they only sold one. Well, Chevy did give their cars names: Impalas, Chevelles, whatever else. They seem to like numbers. In the 1957 Chevy 150 is the quote-unquote classic car, the true classic. The 55, 56 are beautiful. The 57 is outstandingly beautiful. The 58, in my opinion, is one of the ugliest cars ever made, and I used to own one in coral pink. I was trying to find information on this solar-powered car. The front of it says University of Michigan. I searched it, and maybe somebody else can find it. There's a movie about solar-powered car races across Australia, and I think it's Race the Sun. It's an interesting movie about a bunch of kids that put a solar car together and then took it out and ran the race. And no information on this solar car that I could find conveniently. I think this is a 1973 body style Ford Mustang. It is a dragster. They ask you not to touch it. I looked at it. I think this is a complete fiberglass shell. A mystery car. I did not get a photo of the emblem in the grille, so I'm kind of lost, and I chased it down. I suspect somewhere in the early 1950s, probably a US manufacturer. One of the photos in the vault that you just take a shot of because you want to show people that there's a lot of cars in here of different types. A one-of car, probably up in the museum at one time, 1955 Mercury D528 concept car. Really interesting styling. I'm not sure if this styling would have gone over real well, but evidently it never saw production, and it made an appearance on the TV show Outer Limits. This Cruella de Vil thing looks like a highly modified El Camino, Chevy El Camino. I was wondering why it was called a Frankenstein, and then reading the signage on it, I realized that this is actually an assembly of numerous cars and numerous custom-made parts. Evidently the chassis custom tubular, which functions as the exhaust system. It's all-wheel drive. It's powered by a Chevy L98 small block 364, I think, cubic inch, and the body is made up of numerous different Studebaker bodies. So it's Frankenstein because it's an assembly of many pieces. A 1955 Chevy two-door station wagon, and because it's a two-door, it can be a Nomad, and on the tailgate it did say Nomad. If it was a four-door, it can't be a Nomad. A 1954 Ford, obviously, reading the license plates, don't know what body style it is, didn't look it up, might be a Crown Vic. We do know it's obviously a convertible, and a 1961 Rambler. I remember these running around in the neighborhood. They were numerous models, the convertible, the hardtop, the station wagon. No signage for this thing, whether it was custom made or factory made. The Volkswagen thing, this is obviously based on a Volkswagen. Maybe it's the grandfather of the Volkswagen thing. In researching this motorcycle, we found several motorcycles in the mystery in the futuristic type movies that came really close, but nothing that we could lock down and say this motorcycle is out of this movie, whatever movie we could find. No signs on this beauty little beast, but the hood label and the model name tells us, clues us in. It's a 1969 Fiat Chalette. I guess that's how it's pronounced. It's a cute little car. The Corwin 1969 Getaway prototype was a one of a one, and the Cliff Hall, the guy who designed it, was the chief photographer for an African American newspaper in Los Angeles, and he was trying to improve society overall. One of a kind. Now it just seems that Hondas have been around forever as a car. This is the 1967 Honda N600, and it was the first Honda car imported into the United States. The 1953 Hanson Cobras, built by the brothers Wally and Harry Hanson for the Petersen Motorama Custom Car Show, are true one-of-a-kinds. They were built literally from the ground up, specifically for the show, and each brother had one car. I remember the Hot Rod magazines, in particular Hot Rod magazine, carrying Big Daddy Roth's custom cars in it because they were absolutely amazing, and this is one of his numerous examples. The drivable dream car. What a way to label the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air Sports Coupe, the hardtop, quote-unquote hardtop. And I owned a four-door hardtop back many years ago, and with its 283 engine, which was really nice, but it had an issue with a couple of the rocker arm hold down bolts, and it wasn't as real reliable, and I eventually sold it. This is just a beautiful car. The styling is just perfect. We don't have a good photo of the front of these two. I think the green one is a 1952 Chevy, and the black one is a 1953 GMC. This 1932 Ford Ray Brown Roadster was built by Ray Brown back in 1945-1946, 17 years old at the time. He sold it in 1948, and it went into a barn very shortly thereafter. It was discovered in 1991. It still had timing tags, what you get at the drag strip, for what your performance was, in the glove box or somewhere in the car. Since then, it has been completely restored and brought back up to show quality. So the 1927 Ford Roadster by Ray Barizio, Street Rods, there was a cover car in January 1948 on Hot Rod magazine, and with the 50th anniversary there was a desire to clone it or represent that car, and this car was created for that 50th anniversary with a number of upgrades and enhancements along the way. Built up from a 1935 Ford, the 2006 Radster by Lakeside Rods and Rides, and I think that's in Iowa, created this car, and it has won numerous awards for styling. It is a beautiful car. This 1933 Ford, possessed by Scotty's Hot Rods, was built evidently in 2010. It was an amber winner back then, and its design work, its creation certainly represents the 1950s, early 1960s rods and roadsters. In the museum, and I think it's on the second floor, and it was over by where the Mystery Machine was, there was a pictorial on the wall that told you how to identify whether it was a roadster, a high boy, a low boy, a street rod, all those hot rod terms, and this would have helped you out. But the one thing I remember from my days in the 60s and 70s were a lot of license plate frames that said, built by Ford, powered by Chevy. I think this is a combination between something I would expect to find on the mini racetrack and a roadster and something out on the Bonneville Salt Flats. A combination of those three, maybe four items. It was beautiful. I love the paint job. I'm envious of the paint job on these cars. Back in the day when cars were made out of steel and having a collision didn't do a whole lot of damage, this is a 1957 Buick that was obviously a California Highway Patrol car. 1929 Ford two-door custom, highly customized and equipped with a Flathead 8, a classic Ford. This was, to me, this was the most iconic or most representative of the 1950s, say 6 hot rod era, this car here. I'm seeing it throughout the museum, a lot of these AMBR winners. This is a 2001 AMBR winner, a 1933 Ford Roadster Impact, which is a really beautiful car. This is America's Most Beautiful Roadster, and it was it's awarded at the Grand National Roadster Show. This 1963 America's Most Beautiful Roadster winner, this XR6 Roadster, I'm looking at it and I absolutely love it, but I'm trying to figure out what era it belongs in. It does reference George Barris, who did a number of custom cars, and when I was in my teens, I would usually get AMT models and try to emulate George Barris and his customs. This was an internet search. It's a Facial Vega, and it is a French car. It was only produced 1962 to 1964, and it either had a 6.3 or a 6.7 Chrysler V8 engine. The 1966 Corvair. And quite honestly, I think the Corvair was an appropriate car. I don't like Ralph Nader because of what he did to this. This car was designed to go from the house to the store to the house for mom, or for people who didn't want to buy really big cars and didn't need to go real far. And I've seen a couple of really beautiful Corvairs, including one at being driven by one of the docents at the Franklin Car Museum in Tucson, Arizona. It's amazing what you find on the internet. The Mathan V16 is a pair of Chevy 350s bolted together and then produced into this vehicle called the Sweet 16 Chevrolet. Hey, this is what I think my dad would have called a perfect way to couple two engines together. With 435 cars manufactured, it certainly isn't high production. The 1954 Kaiser Darren 161, and if you follow the development of Kaiser in its numerous industries along the way, it was a major manufacturer of many things during World War II, especially ships. And the only thing that's really left of the Kaiser empire now is Kaiser Permanente, the medical facility, the medical system, and part of that's because of the medical benefits that it gave its employees during World War II. The Mopar Hemis are legendary, and this 1967 Dodge WO23 Street Hemi Coronet was one of the ones that was built specifically, evidently, for racing, and as such, it didn't have a whole lot of stuff in it that other cars had in it, and part of it was weight. But by the rules of the game, you had to produce so many for street sales before you could classify them as super stocks. You'll see the wood appliques in 70s and 80s cars, and we had a Dodge Caravan that had it, 1985 Dodge Caravan. This is a 1951 Ford Country Squire, and the wood on this car is considered to be structural components of the car, and Ford was phasing this out shortly. As this car hit the street, Ford was phasing this out, and a lot of the woodwork was done by a contractor. A couple of race cars that I didn't have any luck identifying. I didn't see a driver's name on them, so I was kind of stuck. But open wheel racers, fast and fragile. I'm just guessing on this Audi. I'm guessing that it's somewhere around 2020, 2021. The nice thing about it, or the interesting thing about it, is in the back it has a V10 in an exploded view, so you can see what it looks like. It's raised up, and the parts are exploded out but hard mounted, so you can examine it. Interesting presentation. The 2020 Laraki Sahara is one of two cars that were built by Laraki Automobiles in Morocco, and it was specifically manufactured and made for the King of Morocco. It's a beautiful, interesting design, that's for sure. And I'm going to have fun with this one, the 1959 Chevrolet Corvette Italia by Scaglietti. This was a 3-car production run. The Corvette was sent off to Italy to have this custom body put on it, and after 3 of them were made, Gary Laughlin, Jim Hall, and Carroll Shelby, GM failed to support it. It was intended to contend with the rest of the European race cars with US dependable drivetrains and suspension systems. Here's a couple of Carroll Shelby Cobras. As I understand it right, they were manufactured 1961 to 1967. The bodies came out of Bristol Ace in England, and they were assembled, the drivetrains, chassis, etc. were assembled in Los Angeles, California. This is a 1951 Nash Healey. Enzo Ferrari had his own room in the vault for the Petersen Automotive Museum, and several of his cars, unfortunately one of them out of focus and one of the signage is out of focus, but he builds absolutely beautiful cars, and there's some interesting quotes up on the wall. A race car is neither beautiful nor ugly until its first victory. Okay, I will agree with that, kind of. I think there are some cars that are absolutely beautiful that have never actually powered them, been self-powered. His cars are beautiful, and we all remember Magnum PI driving the Ferrari. This one took a little digging again. It appears to be a 1949 DeLahey 175S Roadster. Beautiful work, beautiful design, beautiful presentation. This is not a car as much as it is a piece of art. More digging based on items that were on the car. This appears to be a 1937 Talbot Lego Special. Another work of art, a beautiful era for cars when they were made out of steel and had true craftsmanship in their presentation from bumper to bumper. There's features you need to appreciate as you look at the photos in detail on this particular car, the 1928 Ruxton Model C Roadster. It was front-wheel drive using a straight 8 Continental engine, and because it was front-wheel drive, it could be lowered to the ground. It didn't need the hump for the drive shaft, didn't need the differential at the rear axle, so it was much lower. There were 500 of them built, estimated 500 of them built, and only a couple survive. And the color, the paint on this car is to original paint. Because we're in the vault, the only photo I have of the 159 Scimitar hardtop convertible is from the front, but it's a hardtop convertible, flip of a switch, the hardtop goes into the trunk area. It's built on a Chrysler New Yorker chassis, and it is built with a German-built body. 1963 Studebaker Avanti R2 Coupe. When the Studebaker Avanti was on the streets when I was a kid, I looked at that car and said, this is like one cool car. In reading this scenario, this thing is powered by a 289, so it's probably a Ford engine, and it's been modified evidently by Andy Granatelli and his crew, and they're just one of those cars of the area you'll never forget. We see one of these running around every once in a while in Southern California. This is a 1948 Tucker, and the Tucker has an interesting history. It was built in a factory about 76th and Cicero, south side of Chicago, just south of Midway Airport, where Ford Motor Company had built B-24 Liberators during World War II. The big three automakers, GM, Ford, Chrysler, spent a lot of money making Tucker spend all of his money challenging all sorts of legal suits and whatever else because they did not want this car produced. The Tucker is a rear-engine car, air-cooled, with a steering responsive center headlight and a number of other safety features. And as I said, the big three did not want this car on the road. As the signage says, the 1924 Franklin Model 10B sedan is an air-cooled engine, and Franklins were air-cooled. And Franklin also built a whole lot of aircraft and helicopter engines, and I worked on a number of Franklin engines, some of them then vertically mounted in the helicopters with very special oil systems. And there's a Franklin Car Museum in Tucson, Arizona, out in the boondocks with some beautiful examples of Franklin air-cooled cars just like this one. More pictures of various open wheel race cars here, and there's a lot of race cars in this museum of numerous different styles. The 1942 to 1946 Lincoln Custom Armored Limousine used by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Harry S. Truman. And I gave you a shot of the window as how thick the window on this is. This is a tank. Here's the 1952 to 1956 Chrysler Imperial Parade Phantom, and it was used evidently by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it says Presidents Dwight D. Eisenhower and Richard Nixon. I don't think Richard Nixon used this car when he was president, probably when he was vice president. The 1962 Gaz 13B Chaika, which means seagull, I guess, in Russian, used by Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier. A significantly modified 1998 Cadillac DeVille Papal Parade Phantom, the Pope Mobile, used by John Paul II on a tour through Mexico. And because I can read license plate frames and I remember songs, a 1955 Ford Thunderbird, an early bird according to the song. 55 early bird. 1939 Mercury convertible coupe, and Ford came out with the Mercury line because it had two primary lines at this point. It had the Ford and it had the Continental series, and they needed something in the middle. So they went from the economy to the high class, and the Mercury was the middle class guys. And it, as it says, to compete with the Oldsmobile, the Dodge, and some other cars. A 1939 Mercury convertible coupe custom, and this was customized, doing several things as the signage says. The top was dropped, the fenders were replaced, the door handles and things were removed to make it look clean and pretty and neat and slick. And this is what customizing is all about. I had an AMT model of, I think, this exact year car. The 32 Ford Dwayne Spencer Roadster is shown here, and as it talks about, was a significantly modified car specifically for the Mexican Carrera Pan America. And I found out in doing some other research, the Carrera, which you see on Porsches, means race. Anyways, this thing was highly modified. It was intended to go into a race. It doesn't tell you how it did in the race, but quite honestly, this is what I look at as a stereotypical 1940s, early 1950s roadster. The 1953 Dodge Storm Zetor, the car shown here, is another one-of-a-kind car, and it was a concept car. It had a special chassis specifically designed to meet some accomplishments and some performance, and it just never got accepted to be produced. It looks like a beautiful car. Why didn't they produce it? Okay, we have to have imagination. The 2002 Xeno 3, designed by Nick Poog. It's a one-of-a-kind car. It was possibly intended to be 3D printed in a couple of hours, and it has some crystalline features to it. It is distinctive, I will tell you that. I don't think it looks real comfortable to get in or to drive. This 1978 Mercedes-Benz 600 State Landau, I guess, was property of Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, and it was driven out of Iraq after his overthrow, and it does have some minor damage, indicating a tumultuous life, I think as it's phrased. A 1988 Mercedes-Benz 500 SEL, which is armored, was given to the ousted President Fernando Marcos of the Philippines while he lived in Hawaii by his wife. And this thing, bulletproof glass, Kevlar door panels, oil sprayers behind the rear bumpers, and things to stop people from following you. It was prepared for the onslaught. I think you need to pause the video and read the write-up on this particular car. The 1979 Hongqi, it's pronounced, model CA770 limousine. It was used by a number of celebrities, built in Manchuria, built in Manchuria, pretty much modeled after American cars. However, the writing on it is Chinese. I think interesting history on who's used this vehicle. No signage on this surf buggy. Somebody sure had fun designing it. You have to appreciate when people have fun building something. I've mentioned it earlier. George Barris had his customs listed in numerous hot rod magazines of the 60s when I was growing up. And this 65 Mustang, Zebra Mustang, was driven by Nancy Sinatra in Marriage on the Rocks. He highly modified the appearance, gave it a targa roof, open front, filled in back, did a number of things. The interior is fake zebra fur, and interesting effect. George Barris built beautiful custom cars. Everyone you ever saw was a beautiful car. Tucked up to the wall is a 1960 Plymouth XNR 500. No signage. I had to chase it around on the internet. I figured it out, and certainly stylistic. This is a 1965 Imperial, modified for the television show The Green Hornet, driven by the Green Hornet's chauffeur Cato. All sorts of guns, missiles, rockets, all sorts of stuff on this car. We watched the television show and we absolutely loved this car. Another movie car, 1982, the Deckard sedan from the Blade Runner. I've watched the movie a couple of times. I find it interesting. This is driven by Harrison Ford as the character Rick Deckard, who is on a special mission. An interesting car. Wonder what's underneath it in the way of chassis and engine. And another one of those cars that you research because of the information on the grill, and it tells you what it is. It's a 1971 Stutz Blackhawk. Around the same time frame, the 60s and the 70s, there was a television show, Stutz Bearcats, which two cowboys, correctors of society, drove around in a car while everybody in a Stutz Bearcat while everybody else was riding horses. So Stutz Bearcat, the Stutz cars mean something to some of us. The 1952 Hudson Wasp two-door Brown car, and the write-up here talks about its correlation to the movie Cars and to the race car driver Herbert Thompson, who drove a fabulous Hudson Hornet, and how that correlates to Cars. I love the movie Cars. I love Doc Hudson, the Hudson Hornet, the Double H, and it's fun to see one. It's fun to see a relative of that in a museum, well preserved. I think we've seen this one earlier. The 1955 Mercury D528 concept car. Interesting design. And this time here we're walking around, I got some pictures of the back through some of the other cars, and as I mentioned, it was used in the television series Outer Limits, and it was also in the 1964 movie The Patsy with Jerry Lewis. There were lots of motorcycles down in the vault. I don't think any of them had signage on them, so you don't know where they came from. I used to have motorcycles. I had a 71 Harley XLH. I'm glad I got rid of it. And then I drove a Honda 70cc, which was absolutely cool. Started out on a Honda 305 Scrambler. And there's a number of race cars throughout here, just parked with very little signage. It's nice to see them. If you can get the makes, the models, and drivers' names, then you can start piecing them together and figure out exactly what they are. There is a wide variety of items in the vault of the Petersen Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. Because of the size of the museum and the size of the vault as a combined unit, I highly recommend you join as a member so that you have multiple access days to the museum system. But you're going to get limited access to the vault. So with that, I recommend you actually start your day, if you're going to tour the vault, in the vault, get your vault pass, and then spend all the time you can that you want to in the vault, because you have limited access to it, and there is a lot of information there. We really enjoyed it. We intend to go back several times during our membership period. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.